The New York rain pounded against the vast windows of the Blackwood Financial Tower, each drop a small percussion instrument in a symphony that most ignored. But for Ethan Blackwood, the sound was both companion and clock, marking time in ways others couldn't comprehend. 20 years had passed since the bombing that took his father's life and stole Ethan's sight at the age of 24. 2 decades of darkness, of sharpening every remaining sense until his world became a tapestry of sounds, scents, and sensations that painted pictures few could imagine. "Mr. Blackwood, the quarterly reports are ready for your review," said Valerie. Morgan, his executive assistant, placing a tablet with specialized software on his desk. "Thank you, Val. Any surprises I should know about?" Ethan's fingers moved deftly across the screen, the device translating numbers into audio data only he could hear through his earpiece. "Nothing that would concern you. Projections are up 6% from last quarter." Ethan nodded, detecting the slight tension in her voice that betrayed her rehearsed casualness. "And the real number?" A pause. 4.3%. His lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "That's why I keep you around, Val. Honesty, even when it hurts. And here I thought it was my coffee-making skills." The exchange was typical of their 15-year professional relationship, built on precision, honesty, and the complete absence of pity. Ethan had constructed his world this way, predictable, measured, controlled. As CEO of Blackwood Financial, he had built a reputation for brutal efficiency and uncanny business instincts. What began as his father's modest investment firm had, under Ethan's guidance, grown into a financial empire that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. His corner office on the 55th floor served as both workspace and fortress. Few were granted entry, fewer still allowed to stay. The furniture was precisely arranged. Ethan could navigate the space without his white cane, knowing exactly 17 steps separated his desk from the door, 12 to the window, 9 to the private bathroom. "Your cousin Diana called again," Valerie continued, her voice revealing nothing. "She wants to discuss the Westbrook merger before tomorrow's board meeting." Ethan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Diana Reed, his father's niece and Blackwood Financial's chief strategy officer, possessed intelligence matched only by her ambition. As one of the few people who remembered Ethan before the bombing, she wielded a peculiar power over him, a mix of shared history and unspoken threat. "Schedule her for 4, no longer than 30 minutes. The intercom buzzed, interrupting their conversation. "Mr. Blackwood," came the voice of the lobby security manager, "we have a situation downstairs that requires your attention." Ethan frowned. "Unless the building is collapsing, handle it." "Sir, it's about a young woman. She's insisting on seeing you personally, says she won't leave until she does." "And this concerns me, why?" "She's in a delicate condition, sir, and quite determined. She claims to have information about your father's old partner, Mr. Winters." Ethan went still. James Winters had vanished shortly after the bombing that killed Ethan's father. The investigation had yielded nothing but questions, and the persistent rumor that Winters had orchestrated everything before disappearing with millions. "Name?" "Sarah Mitchell, sir." The name meant nothing to him. Another fortune hunter, probably, inventing connections to extract money or favors. Yet something in the security manager's tone gave him pause. "Send her up," he said finally, "but have someone escort her the entire time." Valerie made a small sound of protest. "Ethan, your schedule can be adjusted." His tone ended the discussion. 12 minutes later, Ethan heard the elevator doors open and footsteps approach, one set heavy and rhythmic, the security guard, the other lighter, slightly uneven, hesitant yet determined. And beneath those sounds, another so faint most would miss it entirely, the quickened heartbeat of an unborn child, carried within the woman, now standing at his office threshold. "Miss Mitchell," he said, rising from his chair without turning toward the door, "I understand you have information about James Winters." "Mr. Blackwood." Her voice caught him off guard, clear, educated, with a slight tremor that spoke not of fear, but exhaustion. "Thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided to see you yet." "That depends entirely on what you have to say." A pause then. May I sit down? I've been standing for quite a while. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk, noting the small intake of breath as she lowered herself into it. 7 months pregnant, he estimated, maybe 8. Her breathing suggested recent exertion, possibly stairs climbed in desperation, when told the elevator required security clearance. Mr. Blackwood, I don't have information about James Winters. Her admission was direct, unapologetic. I needed to see you and your security wouldn't let me up without a compelling reason. Ethan's expression hardened. So, you lied. I adapted to circumstances, something I've become quite good at lately. Despite himself, Ethan felt a flicker of curiosity. Most people who managed to penetrate his defenses did so with flattery or intimidation. Direct honesty was refreshing, if still unwelcome. You have 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't have you escorted out. Because I'm the best financial analyst you've never hired. Because I graduated top of my class at Wharton, before my fiancé decided to clean out our joint account and disappear with his secretary. And because I need a job that will allow me to support my child with dignity. The words came rapidly but clearly, each one precisely chosen. And because you're Ethan Blackwood, who built an empire by recognizing value where others saw only liability. Silence stretched between them. Ethan tilted his head slightly, processing her words, listening for the micro-indicators of deception he'd trained himself to detect. He found none. Your resume? I uploaded it to your company portal 16 times in the past month. Each time I received an automated rejection within hours. Algorithms can be unforgiving about employment gaps. Or pregnancy. Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly. You believe you were discriminated against? I believe your HR software is programmed to flag high-risk candidates. A pregnant woman with no current employment probably sets off every alarm. She was right, of course. He had approved those exact parameters himself, calculating that the potential productivity loss and insurance complications outweighed any possible talent acquisition. A purely business decision, without malice but also without mercy. What makes you think I'd override my own protocols for you? Because, unlike your algorithm, you can hear me. You can assess more than data points. She leaned forward, her voice gaining intensity. Mr. Blackwood, I don't want charity. I want opportunity. Give me 3 months to prove my worth. After that, either hire me permanently or let me go. Your choice, no obligations. Ethan drummed his fingers once on the desk's surface, considering. There was something about her, a resilience, a clarity of purpose that resonated with him. Or perhaps it was simply that she spoke to him as a person, not as a disability with a financial empire attached. What position did you apply for? Junior financial analyst. But I'm qualified for senior. Confident. Accurate, she corrected. The corner of his mouth twitched. Wait outside. Ms. Morgan will provide you with the necessary paperwork. Does that mean? It means I'm offering you a 3-month contract, starting tomorrow. 8 a.m. sharp. Temporary position, department to be determined. He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. One more thing, Ms. Mitchell. Don't ever lie to get access to me again. There won't be a second chance. Sarah rose awkwardly, one hand on her abdomen. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You won't regret this. That remains to be seen. After she left, Valerie entered, disapproval radiating from her. A pregnant woman with no references? The board will have questions. The board answers to me, not the other way around. Ethan returned to his chair. Find out everything about her. Education, employment history, the ex-fiancé, all of it. And Val? Yes? Put her in Analysis Team 3, under Diana. Valerie's surprise was palpable. Diana will eat her alive, or she'll recognize talent when she sees it. Either way, we'll learn something valuable about Sarah Mitchell. He turned toward the window, feeling the afternoon rain intensify against the glass. Something tells me there's more to her story than she's letting on. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan Blackwood found himself genuinely curious about another person's secrets. Sarah Mitchell arrived at Blackwood Financial Tower every morning at 7:15, 45 minutes before her scheduled start time. By the third day, Security guards greeted her by name, and by the end of the first week she had memorized the precise way she needed to arrange her workstation in Analysis Team 3. Close enough to hear departmental conversations, but far enough from Diana Reed's office to avoid constant scrutiny, Diana had made her position clear during their first interaction. "My cousin may have forced you onto my team, but I decide whether you stay. Pregnancy isn't an excuse for subpar performance." Sarah had simply nodded. "I don't need excuses, Ms. Reed, just opportunities." Those opportunities came in the form of overflow work, complex analyses that others couldn't complete on deadline, problematic accounts nobody wanted to touch, statistical models abandoned for their complexity. Sarah tackled each one methodically, staying. Late into the evening, her growing belly resting against the edge of her desk as she sorted through numbers others found impenetrable. On her 15th day, she encountered Ethan Blackwood in the elevator, an unusual occurrence as he typically used the private executive elevator. The security card reader had malfunctioned, leaving him temporarily stranded in the main lobby. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged, stepping aside to give him space. "Ms. Mitchell." He tilted his head slightly, recognizing her voice immediately. "You're here early." "I always am." 7:15, he said, "every morning since you started." Sarah blinked, surprised he'd noticed. "You keep track of employee arrivals?" "I keep track of patterns. The security system logs entries and exits. Yours stand out." The elevator doors closed, leaving them alone in the small space. "You also leave after 9 most evenings." The Carlton portfolio needed restructuring. The original model wasn't accounting for currency fluctuations correctly. Ethan's eyebrows raised slightly. "That's Diana's project." "It was on the shared server. I noticed the error while working on something else." "And did you mention this to Diana?" Sarah hesitated. "I left my analysis in her inbox this morning." A small smile flickered across Ethan's face. "Bold move." "Necessary one. The error would have cost the client millions if implemented as planned." 2 hours. Elevator stopped at the 32nd floor. Her floor. Sarah stepped forward, then paused. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you again for the opportunity." "Don't thank me yet, Ms. Mitchell. Diana doesn't appreciate being corrected, especially by temporary staff. Some risks are worth taking." As the doors closed between them, Ethan found himself lingering on her parting words. It had been years since someone surprised him the way Sarah Mitchell consistently did, with her quiet competence, her stubborn integrity, and something else he couldn't quite define, a quality that seemed both familiar and entirely new. By the end of her first month, Sarah had established a quiet but unmistakable presence in the company. Junior analysts sought her help with complex calculations. Senior staff began including her in email threads about strategic initiatives. Even the coffee cart vendor in the lobby knew her order by heart. Chamomile tea with honey, never caffeine, one hand protectively cupping her growing belly as she waited. Ethan tracked her progress through company metrics, performance reviews, and the subtle shifts in conversation whenever he mentioned her name to department heads. Diana remained pointedly neutral in her assessments, which told Ethan more than any glowing recommendation could have. His cousin never withheld praise unless truly impressed and threatened. He found himself developing habits previously foreign to him, taking the main elevator more frequently, timing his lobby appearances to coincide with Sarah's morning arrival, requesting her specifically for financial projections that could have been handled by dozens of other analysts. She never commented on these coincidences, but sometimes he caught the small smile in her voice when she delivered reports directly to his office. "The Morrison acquisition analysis you requested, Mr. Blackwood," she said one evening, placing a tablet on his desk. It was past 8 and the office had emptied hours ago. Only Valerie remained, watchful and increasingly suspicious of these late meetings. "You could have sent this electronically," Ethan noted, fingers skimming the device's surface. "I could have," Sarah agreed, "but there's contextual information. That doesn't translate well to your text-to-speech software. Page 6 contains several scenarios with multi-level contingencies. I thought it would be more efficient to explain them directly." It was a reasonable justification, though not entirely necessary. Both knew these in-person explanations had become something of a ritual, an unspoken arrangement that allowed them brief, legitimate interactions outside the corporate hierarchy. "Proceed," he said, leaning back in his chair. Sarah walked him through the analysis, her voice clear and focused, as she outlined potential outcomes and their financial implications. Throughout her explanation, Ethan noted the subtle changes in her, the deepening confidence in her assessments, the way she now moved around his office with familiarity, knowing exactly where she could sit comfortably with her advancing pregnancy. "Your recommendation?" he asked when she finished. "Acquire the technology division but sell off the manufacturing arm. The intellectual property alone justifies the purchase price, and you'd avoid the pension liabilities that are currently hidden in their subsidiary." Reports. "Hidden deliberately?" "Almost certainly. Their CFO has a history of creative accounting." Ethan nodded slowly. "Diana recommended full acquisition. With respect to Ms. Reed, she's focused on short-term revenue expansion. The manufacturing division would boost next quarter's numbers, but the liabilities would surface within 18 months. "And you know this how?" Sarah hesitated. "I used to work with someone who specialized in identifying these kinds of financial time bombs before I came here. This someone being your former fiancé." The sudden stillness told him he'd hit a nerve. "Yes," she finally said. "Daniel was very good at finding weaknesses in financial structures. Among other things, he taught you well." "No, Mr. Blackwood, I taught him." There was no bitterness in her voice, only a quiet certainty. "Most of what he knows he learned watching me work. The difference is what we chose to do with that knowledge." Ethan leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "And what did he choose?" "To exploit rather than strengthen, to take rather than build." Her hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen. "Some people see vulnerability as an opportunity for predation rather than protection." The words resonated deeply within Ethan, echoing his own philosophy since losing his sight. The world was indeed divided between those who exploited weakness and those who overcame it, or transformed it into strength. "Is that why you approached me directly that first day?" he asked. "You saw Blackwood Financial as a structure that needed strengthening?" Sarah laughed softly. "No, Mr. Blackwood. I saw a company run by someone who understood value better than most. I needed that perspective applied to my situation." "And has it been applied to your satisfaction?" "That depends on what happens when my 3 months are up. I have 6 weeks left to prove I belong here permanently." Ethan's phone buzzed, a text message from Diana requesting an urgent call, an unwelcome interruption, but perhaps a timely one. These conversations with Sarah were becoming dangerously comfortable, crossing invisible lines he'd established years ago. "I should let you go," Sarah said, sensing the shift in his attention. "Thank you for your time." "Ms. Mitchell." He stopped her as she reached the door. "The Morrison analysis is excellent work. I'll be implementing your recommendation instead of Diana's." He couldn't see her expression, but he heard the smile in her voice. "Good decision, Mr. Blackwood." After she left, Ethan sat motionless, replaying their conversation. For 20 years he had maintained careful distance from everyone in his orbit, employees, business associates, even family. His blindness had become both shield and excuse, allowing him to focus exclusively on building his empire while avoiding the messier complications of human connection. Yet here was Sarah Mitchell, somehow breaching those defenses without even trying. It wasn't just her intelligence or competence, though both were exceptional. It was the way she spoke to him, directly, honestly, without the hesitation or artificial deference that characterized most of his interactions. She treated his blindness as incidental rather than defining, never rushing to assist him or modifying her language to avoid visual references. Diana's voice interrupted his thoughts as the call connected. "Ethan, we need to discuss Sarah Mitchell." "What? About her?" "She's becoming problematic, overstepping boundaries, inserting herself into senior-level projects." "You mean like the Morrison acquisition? The one where she identified pension liabilities you missed?" Diana's sharp intake of breath was audible. "She went to you directly?" That's exactly what I'm talking about. She's undermining the chain of command, cultivating personal access to you while circumventing proper channels. Her analysis was sound. That's not the point. She's temporary staff, Ethan. Pregnancy aside, there's something not right about her sudden appearance and rapid integration into our systems. Have you considered she might have an agenda beyond simple employment? Ethan's fingers tightened around the phone. Meaning? I had our security team dig deeper into her background. There are inconsistencies, gaps that don't add up, and her ex-fiancé, Daniel Reeves, is currently under SEC investigation for financial irregularities at his previous firm. Has she been implicated? Not directly, but then your point is? Diana sighed in frustration. My point is that you're developing a blind spot where she's concerned, figuratively speaking. The deliberate jab didn't escape him. Diana had always wielded his disability as a subtle weapon, reminding him of perceived limitations whenever he disagreed with her judgment. I see her more clearly than you think, Ethan replied coldly. Continue monitoring if you must, but until you bring me actual evidence of wrongdoing, this conversation is finished. He ended the call abruptly, an uncharacteristic display of emotion that left him unsettled. Diana's warning had struck closer to home than he cared to admit. He was developing something where Sarah was concerned, not a blind spot, but perhaps a dangerous fascination with the one person in his carefully constructed world who made him feel something beyond the cold satisfaction of business success. As Ethan sat alone in his darkened office, rain once again drumming against the windows, he confronted an uncomfortable truth. For the first time in decades, someone had made him aware of his isolation, and having recognized it, he wasn't certain he could return to the emotional vacuum he had once mistaken for strength. The annual Blackwood Financial Charity Gala was the cornerstone of New York's philanthropic calendar, an evening when the company's power and influence transformed into a more benevolent force. For Ethan, it represented a complex social obligation, one he endured rather than enjoyed. Each year, he made a brief appearance, delivered a precisely timed speech about corporate responsibility, and retreated to quieter corners before departing entirely. This year's event coincided with Sarah's 11th week at the company and her 35th week of pregnancy. Ethan hadn't planned on inviting her. Junior analysts rarely attended such high-profile functions, but the week before, when her revised analysis of Asian markets had saved the company from a catastrophic investment in a collapsing conglomerate, he'd mentioned the gala during their debriefing. "Oh, you should attend," he said casually. "The board should meet the person who just prevented a $40 million mistake." Sarah had hesitated. "I'm not sure I'd fit in, literally or figuratively." Her hand rested on her belly, now prominently rounded. "Wear whatever makes you comfortable. It's not a fashion show, despite what some attendees believe." Will Diana be there? Diana practically lives for these events. She coordinates most of the donor relationships. Sarah had gone quiet for a moment. "Then perhaps it's best if I don't attend. My presence might complicate things." Ethan had tilted his head, listening for the subtext beneath her words. "What exactly is happening between you and my cousin, Ms. Mitchell?" "Nothing I can't handle." Her voice carried a firmness he recognized, the same tone she used when refusing assistance with doors or elevators. "But thank you for the invitation." He'd expected that to be the end of it. So when Valerie informed him 2 hours into the gala that Sarah Mitchell had arrived, Ethan found himself momentarily disoriented. He excused himself from a conversation with investors and made his way across the ballroom, navigating through the crowd with practiced ease, his cane tapping lightly against the marble floor. "Mr. Blackwood," Sarah's voice reached him before he located her. "Oh, your speech was excellent." He turned toward her. "Ms. Mitchell, I didn't think you'd come." "I reconsidered. Some opportunities shouldn't be missed, regardless of complications." Ethan smiled slightly, appreciating her echo of their earliest conversation. "How are you finding the event?" "Illuminating. I've already met 3 board members who seemed surprised I exist. The board tends to focus on macro strategy rather than individual personnel. even when that personnel saves them $40 million. There was a hint of amusement in her tone. Especially then. Acknowledging your contribution would mean admitting they missed something vital. Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease, shifting from company politics to the actual impact of the charity's work. Sarah asked thoughtful questions about the educational initiatives Blackwood Financial supported, revealing a personal interest in programs that helped disadvantaged youth access financial education. "My mother was a high school economics teacher," she explained. "She believed financial literacy was the most practical form of freedom." Was? "She passed when I was in college. Car accident." Sarah's voice softened with memory. "She'd be surprised to see me here. She always said Wall Street was where ethics went to die. And yet here you are. Here I am, trying to prove her both right and wrong simultaneously." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of heavy cologne and expensive scotch. Jackson Porter, one of Blackwood's largest overseas clients and a man notorious for his inability to separate business from personal commentary. "Ethan, been looking for you all night," Porter boomed, clapping Ethan on the shoulder with presumptuous familiarity. "Diana said you'd be holding court by the bar, but here you are, tucked away in a corner." "Jackson, enjoying the evening?" "Absolutely magnificent. Your cousin outdoes herself every year." Porter's attention shifted, his voice taking on a different tone as he noticed Sarah. "And who might this lovely creature be?" "Sarah Mitchell," she replied before Ethan could introduce her. "Financial analyst with Blackwood." "An analyst in your condition?" Porter's laugh carried a dismissive edge. "Shouldn't you be at home knitting booties or something equally domestic?" Ethan felt Sarah stiffen beside him. Before she could respond, Porter continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "Though I suppose I understand, Ethan. Even temporary eye candy improves the office atmosphere. Very progressive. Of you hiring the visibly pregnant. Great PR move." The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan's hand tightened around his cane, his expression hardening into something rarely witnessed in public settings. "Mr. Porter," he said, his voice carrying a deadly calm, "you seem to be operating under several misconceptions. First, Ms. Mitchell is responsible for the analysis that prevented us from investing in your proposed Malaysian venture, the one that collapsed last month. Had we followed your recommendation instead of her assessment, Blackwood Financial would be facing significant losses right now," Porter sputtered. "I didn't." "Second," Ethan continued as if he hadn't spoken, "Blackwood Financial values excellence above all else. Ms. Mitchell exemplifies that standard. Her current physical state is irrelevant to her cognitive abilities, which frankly far exceed many in this room, yourself included. Now see here. Finally, since you've expressed concern about our public relations approach, let me be perfectly clear. Blackwood doesn't hire people as eye candy, nor do we discriminate against qualified candidates for any reason, including pregnancy. We do, however, reconsider our relationships with clients who demonstrate poor judgment, casual sexism, and an alarming lack of basic human decency." The confrontation had drawn attention. Nearby conversations quieted as people strained to overhear the increasingly tense exchange. "Are you threatening to drop my accounts over a little joke?" Porter demanded, voice rising. "Not at all. I'm informing you that your accounts are already being transferred to Goldman Sachs, effective Monday morning. Valerie has the paperwork ready. You'll find Marcus Thompson handles their client relations. I believe you know him from Princeton. He shares your particular sense of humor." Porter's face flushed deep red. "You're making a serious mistake, Blackwood. My portfolio is worth less than our company's integrity. Good night, Mr. Porter." As Porter stormed away, muttering threats and obscenities, Ethan turned back toward Sarah, suddenly aware of the spectacle he'd created, behavior entirely out of character for the typically controlled CEO. "That was unnecessary," Sarah said quietly. "I could have handled him." "I have no doubt, but sometimes the organization should speak for itself." Ethan's voice remained calm, though his pulse had accelerated noticeably. "Would you like to continue our conversation somewhere quieter?" Before she could answer, Diana appeared beside them, her smile brittle with barely contained fury. "Ethan, the mayor's wife is asking for you. Sarah, could I borrow you for a moment? There's someone from the Education Foundation I'd like you to meet." The tension between the women was palpable. Ethan hesitated, sensing the confrontation brewing beneath Diana's artificial pleasantries. "We'll continue later," Sarah told him, her tone reassuring. "Don't keep the mayor's wife waiting on my account." As Ethan reluctantly moved away, Diana guided Sarah toward a quiet hallway off the main ballroom. Once they were alone, Diana's diplomatic facade vanished. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "Meeting potential donors for the education initiative," Sarah replied evenly. "Isn't that why you brought me here? Don't play." "Innocent. I've watched you systematically worming your way into Ethan's confidence for weeks. Tonight's little damsel in distress routine was particularly effective, getting him to publicly sacrifice a major client on your behalf. Impressive manipulation." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "I didn't ask for his intervention." "You didn't have to. That's the brilliance of your approach. You've studied him, haven't you? Figured out exactly how to appeal to his savior complex without ever appearing to need saving. You misunderstand our relationship." "Do I? Because from where I stand, you're a virtually unknown entity who appeared pregnant and desperate on our doorstep, somehow bypassed every HR protocol we have, and now has unprecedented access to one of the most powerful blind men in America." Diana stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What's your endgame, Sarah? Money, position, or something more personal?" Sarah met her gaze steadily. "I want what I've always said I want, a fair chance to build a career and support my child." "Then, build it somewhere else. Ethan Blackwood is off limits. That's not your decision to make. Not for him and certainly not for me." Diana's laugh was cold. "You think you know him after a few months? I've watched Ethan rebuild himself after losing everything. His father, his sight, his trust in the world. He constructed walls for a reason, and I won't let you tear them down for whatever game you're playing. It's not a game." "Then what is it? Because there's something you're not telling us. The gaps in your employment history, your convenient expertise in exactly the areas Ethan values most, your ex-fiancé's SEC troubles. It all adds up to someone with an agenda." Sarah's composure finally cracked. "You investigated me." "Of course I did. Did you think I'd let an unknown pregnant woman with convenient financial skills anywhere near my cousin without due diligence? The question is why Ethan hasn't pushed harder on your background himself. It's unlike him to accept anyone at face value." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Sarah's features. "Have you shared your concerns with him?" "Some. Not. All not yet." Diana's eyes narrowed. "But I will if you don't remove yourself from the equation, voluntarily and permanently. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting my family and this company. Whatever you're running from, and we both know you're running from something, don't drag Ethan into it. He's been through enough." Their standoff was interrupted by the approach of footsteps, Valerie looking concerned. "Diana, the mayor is asking about Ethan. Have you seen him?" Diana straightened, her social mask sliding back into place. "He's with the education committee, last I checked. Sarah was just leaving. She's not feeling well." Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I should go. Please tell Mr. Blackwood I appreciated his hospitality." As she turned to leave, Diana caught her arm. "1 week, Sarah. Wrap up your projects and tender your resignation. Cite the pregnancy, personal reasons, whatever saves face. But you're done here." Sarah gently but firmly removed Diana's hand. "Good night, Diana. Give my regards to the mayor." She walked away with deliberate dignity, her exit noticed by few in the crowded ballroom. By the time Ethan inquired about her whereabouts an hour later, she was long gone, a fact Diana attributed to exhaustion from her condition. Ethan accepted the explanation, though something in Diana's tone triggered his suspicion. Whatever had transpired between the women remained hidden, but its effects manifested in Sarah's subsequent behavior. The next morning she arrived at her usual time, but kept rigidly to her desk, declining team meetings and responding to emails with uncharacteristic brevity. When Ethan requested her presence for their usual project review, she sent the documents electronically with a note citing departmental deadlines. The distance continued for days, a palpable withdrawal that left Ethan increasingly frustrated, and though he would never admit it aloud, hurt by the sudden change. On the fourth day after the gala, he summoned her directly to his office, an official request she couldn't reasonably decline. "Ms. Mitchell," he began when she entered, "have I done something to offend you?" Sarah remained standing just inside the doorway. "No, Mr. Blackwood, why do you ask?" "Because you've been avoiding me since the charity event. I'd like to know why." "I've been focused on completing my projects before my contract ends. It seemed prudent." Ethan's expression tightened. Prudent. An interesting choice of word. "Did Diana speak to you at the gala?" The slight catch in Sarah's breath confirmed his suspicion. "We had a brief conversation." "About?" "Personal matters." "I see." Ethan stood, moving around his desk with practiced precision. "My cousin has appointed herself my protector since we were children. It's a role she takes quite seriously. Too seriously at times." "She cares about you," Sarah said quietly, "and about Blackwood Financial." "Diana cares about control. There's a difference." He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance from where she stood. "Whatever she said to you that night, I'd like to hear your version." Sarah hesitated. She expressed concerns about our professional relationship. She feels it's become inappropriate. "And what do you think?" "I think my contract ends in 10 days. After that, none of this will matter." The words struck Ethan with unexpected force. "Is that what you want? For this to end?" Before Sarah could answer, she gasped suddenly, one hand flying to her abdomen. "Sarah." Ethan stepped forward instinctively, alarmed by the sound. "It's fine," she managed, though her voice was strained. "Just a strong kick. He's been especially active today." "He?" A small, reluctant smile entered her voice. "Yes, a boy. I found out last month, but haven't told many people." The moment created an unexpected intimacy, pulling them back to the connection that had been building before Diana's intervention. Ethan found himself wanting to reach out, to place his hand where hers rested, to feel the life she carried. The desire shocked him with its intensity. "Sarah," he began, uncertain of what he meant to say. The office door opened abruptly as Valerie entered. "Ethan, the Tokyo call is starting in 5 minutes. They've moved it up." The interruption shattered the moment. Sarah stepped back, professional distance reinstating itself between them. "I should get back to my desk. The Harrington analysis is due tomorrow." "Of course," Ethan said, his voice carefully controlled. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Mitchell." As she left, Valerie lingered, her disapproval evident in the silence. "Ethan, may I speak freely?" "When have you ever waited for permission?" Diana's concerns aren't entirely unfounded. Your interest in Sarah Mitchell has become noticeable to the entire executive floor. I value competence, Val. You know that better than anyone. I know you, and this is more than professional appreciation. Valerie's voice softened with genuine concern. Just be careful. There's something about her situation that doesn't add up. You've been talking to Diana. I've been watching you get invested in someone you barely know, someone who arrived in our lives very suddenly and has integrated herself remarkably quickly. Ethan returned to his desk, irritation rising. Not you too, Val. I expected this. Paranoia from Diana, but not from you. It's not paranoia to question perfect timing and convenient expertise, Valerie countered. Did you know her former fiancé worked for Winters Capital before it dissolved? Ethan went still. James Winters' company? The same. Daniel Reeves was a junior partner there until just before the SEC investigation began. He disappeared around the same time Sarah appeared at our door. The information landed like a physical blow. James Winters, his father's former partner, the man who had vanished after the bombing that took his father's life and Ethan's sight. The connection couldn't be coincidental. Why wasn't this in her background check? Because she listed her employer as DR Financial Consultants rather than Winters Capital. It's technically accurate. Daniel Reeves ran a subsidiary under that name, but it obscured the connection. Ethan's mind raced, reassessing everything he thought he knew about Sarah Mitchell. Had her appearance at Blackwood Financial been calculated? After all, was Diana right to suspect ulterior motives? The Tokyo call, Ethan, Valerie reminded him gently. We can discuss this afterward. He nodded, forcing himself back to the present moment. Set up a private meeting with security. I want everything they have on Sarah Mitchell's background, everything. As Valerie left to make arrangements, Ethan sat alone in his office, confronted by doubts he'd refused to acknowledge. He'd prided himself on seeing people clearly despite his blindness, on reading intentions through voices and patterns and subtle tells. Had he missed something fundamental about Sarah? Or was he allowing Diana's suspicions to undermine a rare, genuine connection? The question haunted him through the Tokyo call, through meetings with legal counsel, and strategy sessions with department heads. By late evening, when most of Blackwood Tower had emptied, Ethan found himself standing at his office window, fingers tracing the cool glass as rain pelted against it. The storm had intensified throughout the day, bringing early darkness and flash flood warnings across the city. He should have gone home hours ago, but the thought of his empty penthouse held little appeal. At least here, surrounded by the familiar contours of his office, he could think clearly about Sarah Mitchell and what her potential connection to James Winters might mean. A commotion in the outer office interrupted his thoughts. Voices raised. In alarm, the sound of someone shouting for help. Ethan moved toward his door, opening it to chaos. "What's happening?" he demanded. One of the security guards responded breathlessly. "Sir, there's an emergency on the 32nd floor. A woman, one of the analysts, she's in labor." Ethan felt his heart constrict. "Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes, sir. Cleaning staff found her in the restroom. Paramedics have been called, but with the storm, they're saying at least 40 minutes. Another voice interrupted. "The flooding has blocked primary access routes." "Where is she now?" Ethan was already moving, Kane forgotten as he navigated the familiar path to the elevator. "They're trying to make her comfortable in the break room, but it's happening fast. Security is looking for anyone with medical training in the building." Ethan punched the elevator button. "Call Diana, she keeps an apartment 6 blocks from here. Tell her to bring her doctor. She'll know who I mean." The elevator seemed to move with excruciating slowness. When the doors finally opened on the 32nd floor, Ethan could hear Sarah's labored breathing from across the open office space, punctuated by a sharp cry of pain that sliced through him like a physical blade. He moved toward the sound with unerring precision, guided by instinct and the voices of 2 women, a cleaning supervisor and a security officer, attempting to comfort Sarah through increasingly intense contractions. "Mr. Blackwood," the security officer acknowledged with surprise. "How is she?" he asked, moving closer to where Sarah lay on what felt like cushions arranged on the break room floor. "The baby's coming." "Fast?" the cleaning supervisor replied, her voice tense with worry. "Too fast for first-time mama. She needs real doctor." "Ethan," Sarah's voice was strained, disbelieving. "What are you doing here?" He knelt beside her, finding her hand without hesitation. "Apparently attending the birth of your son. Terrible. Planning on my part, I haven't brought a gift." A laugh that transformed into a groan escaped her. "Not how I imagined this going. Paramedics are coming. Diana too, with her private physician. Just hold on." "Don't think holding on is an option," Sarah gasped, her hand tightening around his with surprising strength as another contraction seized her. "He's decided now is the time." The security officer spoke quietly to Ethan. "Sir, maybe you should wait outside. This isn't really—" "I'm staying," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. To Sarah, he said more gently, "Unless you'd prefer I leave." "Stay," she managed between rapid breaths. "Please." Time compressed into a blur of intense moments. Sarah's pain-filled cries, the increasingly frantic instructions from the cleaning supervisor who apparently had assisted deliveries in her home country, the steady pressure of Sarah's hand gripping his as though he were an anchor in a violent storm. "Need to check baby position," the cleaning supervisor announced. "Ladies, help her with legs. Mr. Blackwood, you stay by head." Ethan maintained his position, one hand still clasped in Sarah's, the other awkwardly patting her shoulder in what he hoped was a comforting gesture. He felt utterly useless, stripped of the control he maintained in every other aspect of his life, yet unwilling to leave her side. "Baby coming now," the supervisor announced. "Next pain. You push hard, yes?" What followed tested every ounce of composure Ethan possessed. Sarah's scream as she pushed tore through him, raw and primal. He found himself speaking to her continuously, words of encouragement flowing instinctively as he held her hand through each excruciating effort. "You're doing wonderfully," he told her, brushing sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. "Almost there, one more time." "Can't," she gasped. "You can. You're the most determined person I've ever met. One more push, Sarah." She drew a ragged breath and bore down again, her entire body tensing with the effort. Seconds stretched into infinity, and then the distinctive cry of a newborn shattered the tension, high and indignant and perfect. "Baby boy," the cleaning supervisor announced triumphantly. "Big and strong." The room erupted into relieved exclamations as the tiny human was wrapped in someone's clean sweater and placed on Sarah's chest. Ethan remained motionless, overwhelmed by the enormity of what had just occurred and by his unexpected role in it. "Ethan," Sarah's voice was exhausted but clear, "would you like to meet him?" Hesitantly, he extended his hand. Sarah guided, his fingers to touch the newborn's face. Impossibly soft skin, button nose, wisps of damp hair. The infant squirmed at his touch, letting out another cry of protest. "He has your temperament," Ethan said, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. Sarah laughed weakly. Poor child. The moment of connection was interrupted by the arrival of paramedics, finally breaking through the storm to reach them. In the ensuing activity, vital signs checked, umbilical cord properly cut and tied, mother and baby prepared. For transport, Ethan found himself pushed to the periphery. His utility ended with the child's arrival. As they prepared to move Sarah to a stretcher, Ethan touched her arm. "Which hospital?" "Mount Sinai," a paramedic answered for her. "I'll meet you there," Ethan promised. Sarah's fingers brushed his briefly. "You don't have to." "I want to." The words emerged with a certainty that surprised even him. "I'll bring something appropriate for a birthday celebration." As they wheeled her away, Ethan stood alone in the break room, surrounded by the echoes of what had transpired. In the space of an hour, everything had shifted. Whatever questions remained about Sarah's past, about her connection to James Winters, and the bombing that had altered his life, they seemed suddenly less urgent than the fact of her presence in his world and the tiny new life they had welcomed together. The neonatal unit at Mount Sinai Hospital hummed with quiet efficiency. As Ethan sat outside Sarah's private room, a small stuffed elephant clutched awkwardly in his hands. When the nurse invited him in, he found Sarah tired but alert, their connection somehow deepened by the extraordinary circumstances they'd shared. "Would you like to hold him, properly this time?" Sarah asked after they exchanged quiet greetings. The unexpected offer caught him off guard, but moments later, he found himself cradling the newborn, supporting the small head as instructed. An unfamiliar pressure built in his chest as the child settled against him. "Does he have a name?" Ethan asked softly. "Matthew," Sarah replied. "Matthew James Mitchell." The middle name registered with jarring significance. "James?" A pause. "After my grandfather." The tension shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Ethan could sense the hesitation in her voice, the telltale sign of a half-truth. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. You're wondering about my connection to James Winters." Her directness surprised him. "Yes." "I wondered when you'd figure it out," Sarah sighed. "Daniel didn't just work for Winters Capital. He was James Winters' protégé." As Matthew slept in his arms, Sarah revealed the truth. She and Daniel had both worked for Winters Capital after graduate school. She'd discovered financial irregularities, money laundering, market manipulation, corporate espionage, and when she confronted Daniel, he confessed to more than she'd imagined. Your father discovered what Winters was doing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He was going to expose everything. The bomb wasn't meant to kill him, only to destroy evidence in your father's office. His being there that day was an accident. The words struck Ethan physically. For 20 years, he had believed his father was the target, not collateral damage in a document destruction attempt. Daniel told me everything when I confronted him. He thought I'd uncovered his involvement in covering up the bombing. Her voice caught. When I refused to run away with him, he took everything, our savings, my research, and disappeared, leaving me pregnant and potentially implicated in crimes I never committed. Why come to me? Ethan asked. Why not go to the authorities? I tried. Without concrete evidence, it was my word against a powerful institution. The SEC investigators considered me either complicit or hopelessly naive. She paused. I came to you because I needed a job, yes, but also because I thought working at Blackwood might give me access to information that could help prove what really happened. You were using me, Ethan stated flatly. No, Sarah insisted. I never accessed anything outside my authorized clearance. I never compromised Blackwood Financial. And personally? Did you betray my trust personally, Sarah? The question hung between them, laden with unacknowledged implications. No, she whispered. That's the one thing in this mess that's been absolutely genuine. Whatever has developed between us, I never planned it, never expected it. Ethan stood, needing distance to process this revelation. I need time to verify what you've told. I understand. I was planning to tell you everything after my contract ended, when there could be no question of personal gain motivating my disclosure. As he reached the door, Ethan paused. The amber bracelet your son is wearing, where did it come from? It was my grandfather's. I wanted Matthew to have something with history, with meaning. Ethan nodded slowly. My father had one similar. He wore it every day until the bombing. In the corridor, he found Diana waiting, her expression thunderous. 20 years building walls around yourself, she began without preamble, only to let them come crashing down for a pretty face with a convenient connection to our family tragedy. You knew who she was from the beginning. I suspected. She's using you, Ethan. Her appearance at Blackwood, her insights, her vulnerability. It's all calculated. Their confrontation was interrupted by Valerie arriving with urgent news. The SEC just announced a breakthrough in the Winters capital. Investigation. They've arrested Daniel Reeves in Toronto. He's agreed to cooperate for leniency. Diana seized on this immediately. Perfect timing, isn't it? His arrest just hours after she gives birth in your building? What are you suggesting? Ethan's voice had grown dangerously quiet. That Sarah Mitchell's entrance into our lives wasn't coincidental, that she and Daniel engineered this situation together. There's something else, Valerie interjected. According to these documents, Sarah Mitchell was the original whistleblower who alerted the SEC to irregularities at Winters Capital. Her testimony was instrumental in building the case against both Winters and Reeves. This silenced even Diana. Ethan processed the information, recalibrating his understanding. She wasn't running from investigation, he concluded. She was running from Reeves and whoever might have targeted her for exposing them. That doesn't change the fact that she deliberately sought you out, Diana insisted. Perhaps. Or perhaps she came to the one place she thought might understand her situation, to someone else whose life had been shattered by James Winters' corruption. Ethan faced a defining choice: retreat back into isolation or extend trust to someone whose story paralleled his own in profound ways. Val, contact our security team. I want protection details assigned to Sarah and the baby immediately. As Diana stormed away, Valerie remained. What are you going to do, Ethan? He turned toward Sarah's room, his decision crystallizing with unusual clarity. I'm going to offer her a choice, the same one I never had. Which is? The chance to face the past with allies rather than alone, and perhaps, if she's willing, the opportunity to build something new from the ruins of what both of us have lost. As he re-entered Sarah's room, her soft humming to the newborn stirred something long dormant within him. For the first time since losing his sight, Ethan Blackwood felt himself truly seeing the possibilities ahead, illuminated not by physical light, but by something more profound, the recognition of a kindred spirit who had walked through darkness and emerged still capable of tenderness, still worthy of trust. 3 weeks after Matthew's dramatic arrival, Sarah stood in her sparsely furnished apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes, as she prepared for another transition. The knock at her door came precisely on time. Right on time, she greeted Ethan, attempting lightness despite the weight of the moment. "Punctuality is a virtue I can still practice," he replied with a slight smile. "May I come in?" Since that night in the hospital, when Ethan had offered her legal protection and resources to build a case against Winter's associates, they had maintained careful distance. Today marked their first face-to-face meeting since her discharge. "I've brought something for Matthew, and for you." Ethan gestured to his driver, who delivered 2 packages before retreating. The smaller contained a specially designed bassinet with calibrated white noise for infant sleep. The larger revealed an intricately carved wooden crib. "It's a replica of a family heirloom," Ethan explained. "The original was destroyed in the bombing. My father had kept it, hoping someday—" He trailed off. "I had it recreated from photographs for Matthew." The significance wasn't lost on Sarah. This wasn't simply a gift, but a symbol of connection neither had dared name. Matthew woke with determined wails, and to Sarah's surprise, Ethan confidently held him when offered. "You've been practicing," she observed. The nurses at Mount Sinai provided instruction. His head tilted toward the baby, who quieted immediately. "He recognizes my voice. I've been playing recordings of our project meetings for him. Financial terminology seems to have a soporific effect." Ethan laughed, a genuine sound she had rarely heard. "My quarterly reports finally found their ideal audience." As Matthew settled against Ethan's chest, Sarah broke the comfortable silence. "I've been offered a position with the SEC as a consultant on the Winters case. When would you start?" "Next month. They've been accommodating about Matthew, remote work most days. It's a good opportunity. You'd be directly involved in bringing Winters to justice." "Yes. Is that what you want, Sarah?" The question hung between them, layered with meaning. Sarah studied his face, the strong jawline, the unseeing eyes that nonetheless seemed to perceive her more clearly than anyone. "I want my son to grow up understanding that standing for truth matters," she said carefully, "especially when it's difficult, noble aspirations, but not what I asked." Sarah sighed. "What I want is complicated, Ethan. Most worthwhile things are. I want justice for your father, for others hurt by Winters, for myself." She moved closer, adjusting Matthew's blanket. "But I also want something I'm not sure I have the right to want anymore." Ethan shifted the baby to one arm, his free hand finding hers with unerring accuracy. "Tell me. I want to stop running, to build something permanent. I'm exhausted by always looking over my shoulder." Her voice dropped. "I want choice rather than necessity, the freedom to stay somewhere because I want to, not because I have nowhere else to go." "You think accepting my help compromises that freedom, doesn't it? You've offered protection, resources, everything I need. But accepting creates a different kind of vulnerability, a different kind of debt. Is that how you see it? As debt? My entire adult life has been defined by economic transactions. Winters taught me that everything has a price. Daniel reinforced the lesson." Sarah reclaimed her hand. "I'm trying to learn a different way of existing, but it's not easy to unlearn those patterns." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his attention on the sleeping infant. "When I lost my sight, specialists told me I would develop new ways of seeing, that other senses would compensate. What no one mentioned was how that process would change not just how I perceived others, but how I understood myself." He continued, "For 20 years, I've built an empire on the premise that control equals safety. That vulnerability is weakness. That connection is an indulgence I couldn't afford." His expression became unguarded. "Then you walked into my office, visibly pregnant, unemployed, desperate by conventional metrics, and yet somehow more genuinely powerful than anyone I'd encountered in decades. I wasn't powerful, she protested. I was terrified. Exactly. Terrified, yet refusing to be defined by that terror. Vulnerable, yet using that vulnerability as fuel rather than excuse. His voice softened. You showed me what I'd forgotten. That real strength isn't the absence of fear or need, but the courage to acknowledge both without surrendering to either. What are you saying, Ethan? I'm saying that if you choose the SEC position, I'll support that decision completely. But there's another option, one that doesn't require choosing between justice and stability, between independence and connection. The job at Blackwood? Not just a job, a partnership. The word hung between them, laden with implications. I want to create a division focused on identifying and neutralizing financial predation, Ethan explained. A legacy worth leaving that honors my father's integrity, while acknowledging the financial world has grown more complex and dangerous. We can't prevent every James Winters from exploiting the system, but we can build better safeguards. And you want me to lead this division. I want us to build it together. Your analytical skills combined with Blackwood's resources and my connections. His smile held both humor and vulnerability. Unless you find continued collaboration with me. Unbearable. Sarah laughed softly. Collaboration with you has never been the problem. Then what is the problem? I can't tell where professional opportunity ends and personal entanglement begins. With us, those lines have been blurred from the beginning. Yes, he acknowledged, they have been. And that doesn't concern you. The Ethan Blackwood you first met was half alive at best. You've changed me, Sarah, not through any deliberate effort, but through the simple, revolutionary act of being exactly who you are. His raw honesty dismantled her final reservations. This wasn't manipulation, but genuine vulnerability. Ethan Blackwood offering the one thing he had withheld from everyone for 20 years. I don't know if I can be what you need, she admitted, professionally or personally. I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you already are. I'm just asking for the chance to discover what we might build together, in all senses of that phrase. Sarah leaned into his touch, acknowledging their connection. Not love, not yet, but something with equal potential, mutual recognition of something essential in the other. I assume you have a formal proposal for this new division, she said, her voice steadier. Valerie has the preliminary documentation. Take whatever time you need, the offer won't expire. Matthew began to fuss, signaling the end of their conversation. As Sarah soothed him, Ethan moved toward the door. Ethan, she called, thank you, not just for the opportunity, but for understanding what it means to make choices that aren't driven by fear. That understanding is relatively new for me. I'm still learning how to implement it. We both are. Sarah glanced at her son, then back to the man whose life had become intertwined with hers. Maybe we could learn together. The smile that illuminated Ethan's face contained a warmth she had glimpsed only rarely, a warmth carefully concealed rather than absent. I'd like that, he said simply. The following week, Sarah declined the SEC's offer, proposing a collaborative arrangement with Blackwood's new financial integrity division. 6 months after Matthew's birth, at another Blackwood charity gala, Sarah attended as the recognized head of the innovative division, her hand occasionally finding Ethan's elbow, in a gesture of partnership rather than dependence. The path hadn't been without complications. Daniel's testimony had implicated Winters in operations more extensive than suspected, including the bombing that killed Robert Blackwood. The investigations had demanded Sarah's expertise and reopened Ethan's wounds, yet they stood together, facing these challenges with shared commitment. You're quiet tonight, Ethan observed as they stepped onto the terrace, just thinking about where we were a year ago. How much has changed? Regret, son, he asked, the question genuine. Not regrets, more like appreciation for our path. If I hadn't been desperate enough to bypass your security, if you hadn't been curious enough to see me, none of this would exist. An argument for destiny. An observation about courage, yours and mine. She moved closer, her arm slipping around his waist. "It took remarkable bravery for you to reopen doors you'd kept locked for 20 years. Valerie approached, discreetly. "Matthew's awake. The nanny says he's asking for both of you." As they made their way to the private elevator, Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box containing a bracelet of amber beads, sized for an adult wrist. "It belonged to my father," he explained. "I've kept it in a safe all these years, afraid to wear it, afraid to let it go. But I think perhaps it's time for it to be worn again." Sarah understood immediately, not a conventional romantic gesture, but something far more meaningful. Symbol of continuation, of life extending beyond loss, of the past reclaimed not as burden but as foundation. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice steady despite her emotion. "I've never been more certain of anything." He took her hand carefully, fastening the bracelet in place. "We can't change what happened to either of us, but we can choose what happens next." As the elevator doors opened onto the floor where their son waited, Sarah looked at the man beside her and made her choice with absolute clarity. "Yes," she said simply, "we can." Together they stepped forward into the future they had chosen, to create, not despite their wounds but because of them, not in denial of darkness but in defiance of its power to define them. In that moment of conscious choice, both recognized the true miracle they had discovered, not the absence of scars, but the courage to build something beautiful around them. Fim de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Ethan and Sarah's journey touched your heart. For more captivating stories like this one, check out our special playlist by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this emotional tale, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day, we bring unique